All right. And want to welcome everybody to our 2025 briefing. For the briefing, we're going to have discussion of upcoming IAM events, identify those, and then discuss Grouper, Shibboleth and SAML MCM, CAS, and Midpoint. So if we can go ahead and get started, we've got IAM events with Mike Grady. So Mike, if you would go ahead and get started.
Hi, Mike Grady with Unicon. We always try to put together a list of upcoming events that are of interest to those working in identity and access management, with the primary ones being both EDUCAUSE and Internet 2. So, of course, EDUCAUSE is coming up at the end of this month in Nashville, Tennessee, the 2025. And then there's the online, the last several years, they've been doing the in-person, but also an online session that comes a little bit after the in-person one. And so that's those two dates in November. And then Internet 2, the TechX conference, which is certainly the most technical from our perspective, and the one that really covers identity the best from the higher education perspective in the U.S. That's coming up in Denver in December. The Common and continues to run the training classes in SHIB, Grouper, Midpoint, Co-Manage that they've been offering. They're making quite a few of them now available to do more on demand and online versus in-person attendance. But the links are here as to where to go to see what that overall calendar is of what's already scheduled. The only current one when I checked a week and a half ago was the Grouper implementation one coming up in November. Um, but they're always adding more on there. So the best way is to check that link, and then you can obviously sign up for notifications also. Um, they already have the date established for the the TechX for next year, and that will be back. That'll then be back to an October time, end of October in Minneapolis next year. You want to move on to the next? I think on the next slide, there's some other links that you can. Who's advancing the slides?
I am Mike.
Oh,
There you go.
there. Um, the uh, COMEX, the community exchange from Internet 2, the next one of those will be in April in 2026, and that's in Chicago. Then you have the series of IAM Online, which usually has at least one presentation a month. Again, the best way to stay on top of that is with the link in the slides. Um, and there's a broader Internet 2 events calendar that one can check in on. Um, they've changed the name now. And Commons had a program for a number of years called Collaboration Success Program, which they now have changed the name to In Common Accelerators. Um, and that's usually a little more intensive thing where you're working with a set of peers from other institutions for a focused amount of time, 3 to 6 months or somewhere along those lines, um, on all things identity. So that's another program if you've never participated, you might want to look into. And finally, from a broader IAM, the Gartners and the internet identity conferences, and that final link on the page links to that broader industry identity events. And that's it for what we have to highlight in events at this time.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Before we move forward, if you have any questions, just go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will try to answer those as we go through. Somebody will hopefully respond in chat, and we'll check at the end of the presentation to see everything that's involved with that. So, Grouper is next, and Jim Beard will be presenting.
Hi everyone, Jim Beard here. Since our last presentation, we've seen some advances in Grouper version 4. So this is the kind of stable, non-new feature branch. 4.19.1 is the latest stable release. So if you're looking to upgrade, that would be where to look. Since the last time we've talked, there's been several provisioner enhancements, fair amount of work and improvements made with the SCEM provisioner, and also work with Azure, Midpoint SQL, and a few other provisioners as well. They've updated their OS that they're packaging the container with to Rocky Linux 9.6 and also updated the Tomcat server to be 9.0.108. And then there's been just kind of a handful of general enhancements, upgrading some of the third-party libraries that they're using, pulling out duplicate libraries, some general performance optimization, enhanced logging, and a fair amount of work on the upgrade path for going from version 4 to version 5. And we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So in regards to Grouper 5, 5.20.5 is their latest stable release. They've had a number of releases as they work on the new features. It contains all the updates that we saw in version 4. And then aside from that, there's been a number of ABAC logic improvements. It's attribute-based access control. There's been work on upgrade task improvements. Moving forward, with the newer versions of Grouper, upgrades should be a little more automated and require less manual steps. So that should be nice for everyone. And then with version 5.21 and above, they've put in a fair amount of work in kind of redoing the group summary screen. So that should start providing some more recent, newer information, maybe be a little more meaningful and a little more customizable. And with the Grouper 5 branch, that's where they're working on new features. So when you upgrade or deploy that branch, you need to make sure you're kind of testing everything to make sure there's not any issues that pop up. So things to think about when you're upgrading from version 4 to version 5. Version 5 introduced a membership cache that it's using for some of its ABAC groups. Uh, and that has to be initialized when version 5 starts up. So the recommendation right now is that there's a daemon job that got introduced that will do that um, initialization in version 4 before you upgrade. But in order to utilize that, you need to be on 4.19.0 or above. So the recommendation is to get your version 4 installed to be at that level and then move on to 5.20.0 from there. The version 5 is running just Tomcat only in the container. There's no Apache or no SHIB being managed within the container. So if you're using that, you need to kind of think about how you're going to address that when you move to version 5. And for single sign-on, the recommendation is to use either built-in OIDC or the Pack4j plugin, which I believe has started shipping with the more recent versions. You don't have to actually download it and install it yourself. There's in version 5, there's no PSP&G support, only the newer provisioners. So you need to make sure you're no longer using PSP&G at all. And the SOAP API is being removed. So if folks are using SOAP, you want to migrate to REST. And if get the slides later, there's a reference to where the instructions are at for upgrading that kind of go into a little more detail. There was one security notice that came up since the last time we talked. It was in version 5, affected versions 5.17.1 through 5.22. And it allowed non-admin users to add loader attributes to some groups. They weren't impactful, but it wasn't intended to be that way, and it's since been patched. And then just kind of a heads up on the general grouper roadmap. Version 5 continues to be where they're working on the new features. So it's not as stable as version 4. At some point in the near future, they're going to switch from version 4 and 5 to version 6 and 7. They haven't announced when that is going to be, but there was talk about potentially trying to do it before TechX, although I'm not totally sure it's going to happen that soon. But in the near future, it should be happening. Version 6 will become the stable version where they're maintaining it and not adding new features to it. And then version 7 will become the feature enhancement branch. They're planning to look at removing legacy subject sources, some of the operation performance improvements, as well as the underlying DDL. So that's kind of what we can look at moving forward.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Next, we'll be discussing Shibboleth, SAML MCM, and then Sean Porth will be presenting for that.
Good afternoon. You're going to see that these slides pretty much have not changed since last time. The big news still is just a reminder that IDP4 is end of life. You should upgrade as soon as you can. As a reason why is recently there was a CAS module security issue that was fixed in 5, may or may not be present in 4, but it's just another reason that you really want to go to 5 at this point. Next slide, please. So I said, version 5.1.6 is the latest that was released just recently to address the CAS path traversal issue that we just talked about. Mostly everything there is still the same. Java 17 updates the Spring in this latest release as well, and they're doing mostly just work on getting this running nice and fast. And I think the rest of the work, at least from what we learned last TechX, is that they're going to really focus on trying to fix the documentation before they do anything else, which I think most people here will agree is a welcome change. Next slide, please. Absolutely nothing has changed with the SP. Pretty much the only updates are Windows patches, and nothing has changed with information on what's going on with version 4. Next slide. Just a reminder for some people that the old legacies in common feeds are technically, end of life. Some of them still work, but you really want to move to the stable MDQ. It's just faster and better for everyone and gets updated quicker. And if you're using any other ones, you're going to start getting inconsistencies with some of the signing certificates and things like that. And yeah, we have the instructions still there on converting to MDQ if you haven't done it. Yeah, next slide, please. All right, SAML MCM, not much has changed. Technically, version 1.18 is the current, but we do have version 2.6 out there, which is the latest, working with Java 17. As a general MDQ server, it's been working pretty great for some universities, and even Unicon is implementing it in our own product. And yeah, I think that's about it. As I said, not much changed.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Sean. Andrew Tillinghast will be presenting on CAS.
Right. The current release of CAS is 7.3, just came out about a week ago. Major changes is though it still continues to run under JDK 21. It has full support for JDK up to 25, and the previous version 7.2 is got an end of life date of next March 31st. Next slide. So major highlights, as I said, we now support in JDK 25. Has moved to supporting Spring Boot 3.5, Tomcat 11, and added new support for OpenID Connect native SSO and OpenID Connect AuthZen. The major highlights of this new feature. Added a Apache Geo ticket registry, new functionality for multi-tenancy, so you can have multiple identities in your single CAS release. And as usual, this is the link to get the full release notes. We're continuously working with development of CAS 3 here at Unicon. We've contributed some bug fixes through OpenID, endpoints corrected to mount for all relevant URLs, SIM logout requests now handle the better transient name ID format. And you can now actually display your CAS host name in the user interface, which helps with some of the virtual servers. And plenty more that Unicon's involved in to keep CAS moving ahead.
All right, and that's it, Andrew. Thank you. Mark will be discussing midpoint.
Hello, everyone. Let's talk about Midpoint. So there are currently two released versions of Midpoint that are officially supported. The previous version, 4.4, which was the long-term version, and anything between 4.4 and 4.8, those are all EOL. The long-term version is 4.8, and currently that's 4.8.9, which will be supported by Evolve EM until 2028. There's also the feature release, which is their branch where they add new features and test out new ways of doing things, right? And that's been fairly stable. We've actually had several customers switch to that, and they're running that in production and are very happy with it, taking advantage of some of the new features we'll talk about here in a few minutes. They're also releasing the next feature branch of 4.10, which is expected at sometime in the next month. That's on their roadmap. That'll add some new features on top of what's already there from 4.8 and 4.9. Obviously, some bug fixes and cleanups and new things going on there. Go ahead and next slide, please. So with 4.8, most people are running that. I would hope so, at least. If you're on one of the earlier versions, we'd recommend upgrading to 4.8 at least fairly soon, if the previous versions are end of life. 4.8 has some UI updates, a lot of quality of life stuff for the administrator within 4.8, as well as improvements to the IGA subsystems, the identity government subsystems. They added simulations, which is nice because you can then run jobs in a development mode or a production mode, and you can see what would happen as you're testing out new mappings or new features as you're turning them on. There's a lot of security performance enhancements. They've added smart correlation, which relies on some Postgres features. So one of the things that we'll talk about later on as well is kind of the reliance on Postgres and the Postgres versions that it supports. The midpoint query language was expanded and used throughout the entire system as opposed to in only a few small places as in the earlier versions. And the Ninja tool is very helpful. They've expanded the use of that, especially during upgrades. There's a lot of, again, quality of life for the admin that have been added by new versions of Ninja. Next slide, please. And so in the 4.9, since it's a feature branch, it has everything that 4.8 has, plus some new features that they've been adding. One thing that is a really good improvement is actually shadow caching. It's now a feature within Midpoint. So when you look at the shadow object directly in the raw XML, you'll now actually see the cached versions of the different attributes that have been set on the different objects. Helps in a lot of troubleshooting. There's also a lot of IGA improvements, especially around the areas of role binding and information classification. A large improvement was made to associations, so the way groups and users are linked together, coming from, for example, Active Directory or LDAP. Very, very useful there. They added support for external secrets providers, so you no longer have to keep an encrypted uh, password for like a resource in your repository, and then as you check out the source code and try to save that XML, you don't have to keep that in there. You can actually have that in an external secret provider. Uh, Great for security. There's always security performance improvements with every new version, as well as improvements with that Postgres native database repository as well. And the updated first steps methodology, if you took the first steps or webinars that they've put out in the past, they've gone and revamped them, showing a lot of new features, and they're all based around 4.9 going forward, and the new features there. And again, one that's not listed here, but again, there's a lot of quality of life improvements again for the admin as well. A lot of UI fixes, UX fixes in the web interface. So between the versions, Java 21 is still the recommended version. 17 is still supported. If you're on if your earlier versions 4.4 and you're trying to upgrade to 4.8, you can still do that on 11. But again, the volume team recommends at least 17, but preferred 21. Postgres 16 is recommended. It supports 16, 15, and 14. However, with some of the newer features they're implementing within the repository backend, the native repository, they're taking advantage of some of the newer features in Postgres and the improved features. So really, 16 should be the goal as you're doing your upgrades. They will remove the generic repository in a future release. They haven't said exactly which one yet, but all of the new features that they're doing rely heavily on a lot of those Postgres features that are really only in Postgres. They aren't in MySQL or Oracle. So making sure that as part of the planning for an upgrade, that if you're still on the legacy backend, that you are looking to to use that native backend as you upgrade. And just a reminder, past version 4.8.1, the clustering feature does require an Evolvium subscription. There are a couple of different variations of the subscription, and they have different pros and cons of which ones would be best for you. So if you do have any questions about the subscriptions, which one would be best in your situation, meet your needs the best, please reach out to us. We can help with that definitely. Next slide. The various versions of the connectors, they're stable. These are the ones in 4.8, 4.9. They do a few version bumps, and again, performance and enhancements, on some of them. Again, better quality of life for some of the newer ones. But these are the ones as of 4.8. Next slide. Oh, and that's the end of my section.
All right, and that's it. And so I see we've had, okay, nothing really from chat or questions. We do have time. I see somebody with a hand raised, so I'll go ahead. And Kenneth Jager, do you have a question?
Yeah, I would have typed in the chat, but that looks like I'm seeing chat disabled. I just wanted to know what's the plan on Grouper in terms of moving off of Tomcat 9 toward Tomcat 10 or 11? If that's on the roadmap somewhere, or probably planned for Grouper 6. Just curious.
I haven't heard any discussions on that. Something I can bring to the grouper developers' attention.
Yeah, the only reason I mention it is because um, 10.1 and 11 of Tomcat fully support the new Jakarta E. And that may be why, right? That may be why that they're taking time to move. But that's kind of the modern Java and Java Enterprise development is using the newer Jakarta.star namespace for everything. So it doesn't affect us too much, our usage of it at this point, but just going forward to be on modern, because all the other things I noticed, whether it be Shibboleth or Midpoint, and everybody else seems to be moving forward, and that one's still behind. So
Yeah, Grouper does tend to lag behind in its library updates because it just has a huge number of
right.
libraries to keep up to date. So
Okay.
probably, I think it is on the roadmap for version 5. Probably before they switch the version numbers, there will be a push to upgrade the libraries. And
Right.
as part of that, that might, require or make advantage of upgrading Tomcat. So I would look in the next few months for that to be
Okay.
done.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the question. Does anybody else have any questions? I guess not. We can go
Well,
ahead. Oh, there's one other one.
Steve,
Okay, Kim.
I'll add one other thing. It's probably unlikely that anyone on this in this session is relying on discovery service, that you're running an SP that other that are needing to get identities from a wide range of IDPs. But that's another thing that in common is going to be retiring its existing discovery service, that you can you could point a SAML SP that you brought up that supports a discovery service like the SHIB one does. You could point it to a URL that then you could potentially choose an IDP from in common, or even from other global federations. So if you're doing anything with discovery services relying on that, you may want to say check into the communications from in common on how that's changing.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Kevin, you can go ahead. I think you're able to ask your question.
Okay. Yeah, I get a lot of vendors updating their metadata with the key of the year, and sometimes even more often than that. And it's a lot of work to keep up with it. I don't run a metadata manager. I would like to, but do most people chase that along, or are they ignoring signing keys? So many people provide them and don't even use them. When you trace the SAML, you see they're not in use, and they still send updates out saying, you've got to update this. I'm like, yeah, if you start using it, I'll need to, and I have no choice but to, chase along and have it available. Um, but it's a lot of overhead that I would love to get out to be able to avoid some of. And I was wondering if there was a consensus on keeping up with the Joneses.
There isn't. I mean, if you're going to insist on continuing to support those certificates, there isn't any magic pill to take to support that, other than you can lessen the burden with a metadata manager. My personal recommendation, and I know Scott Cantor believes in this too. Generally, a signed authentication request adds almost no security to your SAML implementation.
Yep.
So you just tell your IDP to ignore signed authent requests. So now, if you're running the SHIB IDP, it does not it insists, even if the metadata says that authent request signed is false, if the authent request coming in is signed, it will insist on being able to verify that signature, or it will reject the authent request. But there is an there's an override, relying party override, that you can use for ignoring those signatures, which my personal recommendation is, if you're dealing with an SP that's going to keep changing that every year, just put that on there, and then you don't need to worry about it. You can take the signing cert out of the metadata, or you can leave it there. It doesn't matter. The IDP is not going to try to verify the signature, and that simplifies the signing cert thing. Now, there is no encryption, on the other hand, does add some security value. Again, given that you probably have any number of SPs to which you send unencrypted responses anyway, is there enough benefit to deal with someone who's going to rotate that once a year? Maybe not. And so that's a little bit more of a hard to say one way or the other because there is some security value to having an encrypted response. But again, you'd say I would certainly strongly consider turning off even encryption if I was dealing with a vendor that insisted on doing that on a yearly basis. If it gets to be more, they're going to rotate it every 2 or 3 years, and then it's a little bit more of a toss-up. But my personal opinion, the risk of having a service outage is a much more likely risk than the risk that you would entail by turning off verifying a signature on an authn request. So that from a risk management perspective, you're better off telling it to ignore those signatures and not, ending up with service outages because they changed the certs and the notification got lost in the mail and it wasn't done in time.
Yeah, I guess I'll send in a question separately about the particulars. I've been through this before and chased around on it. And yeah, some people, a smaller number, are actually using encryption. So I can't toss it all out with the bathwater, but I would like to limit it down to only caring about the certs where I already know that they're using encryption, because there's a lot of them. It's just busy work. Knowing that your opinion and having read Scott's as well. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right. If not, thank you everybody for attending. We will be putting this recording out on our YouTube site at some point in time in the near future. And so if you want to reference anything you can get to that on our YouTube site. So thank you for attending, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.